So, this idea of this is not new for those of you that have been here for a while. So, neurons that fire together, wire together. I was sitting there actually early this morning. I was sitting there thinking, like, in neurons, like it just, I just did gloss over this idea of what a neuron is. A neuron is a distinct cell, right? So, it has all the structures of a cell, just like a blood cell or a skin cell or you name it, any kind of cell in our body. A neuron is one of those, and we have them all over our body. So for example, when you go and if you remember, if you have little kids, maybe you're still experiencing this now, but that dreaded, like, "Ah, I stepped on that Lego piece," right? So I'm going to say, so let's say it's a Lego piece, or it's a thumbtack or something like that, something that you step on and it hurts. So what exactly is happening there? The answer is, what happens there is there's an insult, there's an injury that gets picked up by the peripheral nervous system in the form of these neurons that are in our skin, in our soft tissue, in our feet, and so on. Now, single neurons, there are neurons that we have that extend from our feet all the way up to our spinal cord. A single cell, right? So again, I usually, when I think of cells in the body, I think of these tiny, tiny little things that are just, they're these like microscopic little blobs of things that are floating around the nervous system. Uh, but in the nervous system's case, some neurons can be several feet long, and that's the case. When you think of the sciatic nerve, or you think of other nerves like that, where that stimulate pain, these are bundles of neurons that are going from our feet or our lower extremities all the way up to the spinal cord. And then there's this magical thing that happens in the synaptic connection between that neuron and the spinal cord, where these neurotransmitters are swapped back and forth, and that then sends a signal up to the brain that says, "Oh my gosh, you just stepped on a piece of Lego, and now you should feel angry at your 3-year-old toddler for having left that Lego thing there in the dark that you stepped on." The point being, there's this whole process that happens in the peripheral nervous system long before it reaches any conscious part of ourselves where we can sit there and make sense of it, right? It's just happening. It's like touching a hot stove and recoiling and saying, "Oh my gosh, that was hot. I'm not sure what happened. Ouch, there's the pain. Now I'm getting it," like a second or two later. Okay, so the reason I'm bringing this up is because when it comes to stepping on a thumbtack, this sort of kind of makes sense. There's like a logical transmission of, well, you stepped on the thumbtack, that nerve got activated, that neuron then sends the signal up to the spinal cord, sends it up to the brain that says, "Ouch, that really hurt," and so on. But when it comes to psychological trauma, or any forms of PTSD, it's not so clear. Like, where's the Lego piece? What did I step on? Like, I don't see it. I can't make sense of it, right? And this is what I think makes psychiatric or psychological pain so different from something like orthopedic pain. I broke the bone, the muscle got injured. It's clear to me what's happening. When it comes to the stuff that relates to anxiety and depression and PTSD, it's like oftentimes it just doesn't compute because we can't see the clear, sort of the biological chain of command, and how that signal gets transmitted. So I thought today, let's spend some time just dropping into that place and just appreciating that this is more complicated. When we feel anxious and depressed, it's sort of same but different. And yeah, just see if that registers or makes sense for you. So close your eyes and drop into this moment right here, right now. And you can do that by noticing the sounds around you, noticing the heartbeat in your chest, and just making space for all of it. And maybe the birds are chirping, or the cars are driving by, or you feel the hum of the dishwasher, whatever it might be, that's there. And then there's also this internal sense of heart beating, breathing, digesting. And see if you can bring to mind a memory of a time where you had a kind of physiological trauma. So you stubbed your toe, you hit your thumb with a hammer, you burned yourself on the stove, like something that where it's really obvious, where you look at it and say, of course, that happened. It hurt. It makes sense. See if you can drop into that memory of like, there it happened. There's the physiological insults. Of course, it's going to hurt. But then just notice what happens in the body. Like the signal goes from the fingers or the thumbs or the toes or the sciatic nerves. And just imagine that signal going up to the brain. The brain's processing it, trying to figure out what it all means. And it creates a loop. And my guess is for the most part, we can kind of conceptually make sense of that all happening. Right? Insult happens to the peripheral nervous system. Message gets sent to the spine, up the spine to the brain. The brain says, ouch. It's like, yeah, that kind of makes sense. I get it. And now see if you can superimpose that same idea to emotional or psychological pain. When that person said what they said, or they looked at me funny, or fill in the blank, it hurt, right? But there's probably not as clear cut a sense or an ability to say, this is where the pain started. And that's why I'm experiencing it. It's more confusing, it's more ambiguous. So just hang with that for a moment. Just notice like it's more complicated. And can you allow for the complication? Can you appreciate that? Oh my gosh, yeah, there's no clear cut broken bone or soft tissue injury. It's gosh, some of the stuff that happened that's still present for me. Some of it happened years, if not decades ago, and here these nerve bundles are still being activated and stimulated. I think this thing that we're touching into here, this complexity, is the very reason why so much of our health insurance and our healthcare system, when it comes to mental health, is so dysfunctional. because it just doesn't appreciate the complexity of the stuff that's difficult for us. Looking for the clear cut, here's the injury, here's how I can fix it. So the goal here is just to appreciate the complexity, notice the lack of clear causality, and expand our capacity to allow things to be ambiguous or confusing or unclear. And that doesn't make them any less meaningful or worthy of our attention. It just means that there's no perception that there's some kind of a clear, well, because of this, then that. Take a deep breath in, out, letting go of the stressful memory, if there was one. Hold the exhale for 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and in. And out. Hold 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Let's do one more. In, out. And hold 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Open your eyes. Come on back. Um, yeah, I think at the end of the day, the intention of this session was to just notice how the way we explain certain things that totally make sense to us oftentimes fails us when it comes to, like the physical realm makes sense, but then when it gets to the psychological, emotional realm, oftentimes it falls apart. So just appreciating that. Hope that helped.